In March 2024, the most powerful storm to hit Oahu's North Shore in decades brought waves that towered 40 feet high, carving away sections of beach that hadn't moved since the early 90s. Among the debris washing ashore at Pipeline Beach, a tourist with a metal detector discovered something that would finally solve a mystery that had haunted Hawaii's surf community for 32 years. Inside a waterproof pelican case, sealed since 1992, lay a Nikon camera with undeveloped film that would reveal what really happened to Tyler Nakamura, one of the most promising professional surfers of his generation. Before we begin the story, let us know in the comments which city you're watching from. We're really curious where you're tuning in from. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a rating. The North Shore of Oahu in 1992 was a different world. There were no webcams streaming the waves, no Instagram posts from the beach. Surfers checked conditions by driving to the overlook at sunset, and news traveled through payphone calls and handwritten messages on the bulletin board at Foodland. The Pipe Masters competition that December drew the best surfers from around the world, but it was still an intimate affair compared to today's corporate spectacle. Prize money was modest, sponsorships were rare, and making a living as a professional surfer meant scraping by on whatever combination of contest winnings, photo shoots, and shaping boards you could manage. Tyler Nakamura understood this reality better than most. At 24, he had grown up on the North Shore, the son of a Japanese immigrant father who ran a small construction company and a Hawaiian mother who taught at Sunset Beach Elementary. Tyler had been surfing pipelines since he was 12, back when local kids could still paddle out without dealing with crowds of tourists. By 1992, he was on the verge of breaking through to the next level. He'd just won the preliminary rounds of the Pipe Masters, securing a $50,000 sponsorship deal with a major surf brand. For someone who'd been sleeping on couches and eating rice and canned tuna for months, it was life-changing money. The morning of December 18, 1992, started like any other winter day on the North Shore. The trade winds had backed off overnight, leaving the ocean's surface glassy and perfect. Tyler woke early in the small apartment he rented behind Ted's Bakery, just a 5-minute walk from Pipeline. His surfboard, a custom 7'2" gun shaped specifically for Pipeline's powerful waves, stood ready in the corner. He'd spent the previous evening meticulously applying a fresh coat of wax, preparing for what weather reports suggested would be ideal conditions. At 7:45 a.m., security cameras at the Pupukea ABC store captured Tyler buying a roll of Fujifilm and a bottle of Pog juice. The receipt, later found in his apartment, showed he paid with cash, counting out exact change from a worn wallet that still contained his Blockbuster membership card and a folded photo of his girlfriend. He chatted briefly with the cashier about the swell forecast, mentioning he planned to shoot some photos later with a friend. The cashier would remember this conversation clearly because Tyler seemed unusually upbeat, talking about using his sponsorship money to help his parents pay off their mortgage. Shane Peterson had also risen early that morning, though for different reasons. At 26, Shane was everything Tyler wasn't. Blonde-haired, blue-eyed, from a wealthy family in California. He'd moved to Hawaii 3 years earlier, determined to make it as a professional surfer, bringing with him expensive equipment and enough family money to rent a beachfront house in Halewa. But money couldn't buy respect in the lineup or the natural talent that seemed to flow effortlessly through Tyler. Shane had just lost his own sponsorship deal, the company choosing not to renew after a string of poor competition results. The rejection letter, dated December 10, 1992, specifically mentioned they were refocusing their budget on emerging local talent. The tension between Shane and Tyler was well known in the surf community. They'd had several heated exchanges in the water, mostly about wave priority and respect. Local surfers later described Shane as someone who thought he could buy his way into the lineup, while Tyler was seen as the future of Hawaiian surfing. But their rivalry had taken on a new dimension since Tyler's recent win. Shane's girlfriend, Megan Chen, worked as a surf photographer, and she'd been spending more time photographing Tyler for magazines, professional proximity that Shane clearly resented. Megan Chen was 23, born in Taiwan, but raised in Huntington Beach, California. She'd arrived on the North Shore 6 months earlier, initially to document the winter surf season for Surfer magazine. Her photographs had a unique quality, capturing not just the action, but the entire culture surrounding professional surfing. She lived with Shane in his Alibi rental, but neighbors reported frequent arguments echoing across the beach at night. Her camera equipment, worth more than most people's cars, was always meticulously maintained. She carried her Nikon F4 everywhere, shooting roll after roll of film that she would develop in a makeshift darkroom she'd set up in Shane's garage. Brett Morrison occupied a different position in this triangle. At 28, he owned Sunset Surf Shop, one of the few locally owned businesses that hadn't been bought out by mainland corporations. Tyler was both a team writer for the shop and Brett's business partner in a small surfboard shaping operation they ran out of a warehouse in Waialua. Brett had grown up with Tyler's older brother, and the Nakamura family trusted him completely. What they didn't know was that Brett had developed a serious gambling problem, placing increasingly large bets on football games through a bookie who operated out of a Chinatown restaurant. By December 1992, he owed almost $30,000, with interest accumulating at 10% per week. The relationship dynamics that morning were complex. Tyler trusted Brett like family. Shane saw Tyler as everything standing between him and success. Megan found herself caught between professional opportunity and personal loyalty. And Brett faced pressure that was literally life-threatening if he couldn't find money fast. 3 days before Tyler's disappearance, witnesses at the Sunset Beach parking lot observed what appeared to be a heated discussion between Tyler and Brett about money and percentages, though Tyler was seen laughing and patting Brett on the shoulder as they parted. Around 11:30 a.m. on December 18, Tyler made a call from the payphone outside Foodland. Phone records would later show this was to Brett's shop, lasting approximately 3 minutes. A tourist taking photos nearby happened to capture Tyler in the background of a shot, showing him gesturing animatedly while talking, his surfboard leaning against the phone booth. Whatever was discussed, Tyler headed to the beach immediately after, stopping briefly at his apartment to grab his board and wetsuit. Carlos Hernandez ran a small stand selling shaved ice and plate lunches from a converted van at Pipeline Beach. He'd held the same spot for 5 years, knew all the local surfers by name, and had watched Tyler grow from a skinny teenager to a professional athlete. Around 2:15 p.m., Carlos saw Tyler on the beach, waxing his board and studying the waves. But Tyler wasn't alone. Shane was there too, along with Megan, who was loading film into her camera. Carlos remembered thinking it was unusual to see them together, given the known tension. He heard raised voices, though the wind made it impossible to make out specific words. What struck him most was Tyler's body language, backing away from Shane while holding his hands up in what looked like a peacekeeping gesture. The last confirmed sighting of Tyler Nakamura alive was at 2:30 p.m. Another surfer, paddling out through the channel, saw Tyler duck diving under a set wave at Pipeline. The conditions were solid, but not particularly dangerous by Pipeline standards. Perhaps 8 to 10-foot faces, the kind of waves Tyler had surfed hundreds of times. Shane was also in the water, positioned further down the lineup. Megan was on the beach with her telephoto lens, shooting what she would later claim was just another routine surf session for her portfolio. By 6 p.m., as the sun set behind the mountains, Tyler hadn't returned. His truck, a beaten-up 1987 Toyota pickup with surfing stickers covering the rust spots, still sat in the parking lot. His wallet and keys were under the driver's seat, exactly where he always left them. The sunset crowd of surfers and spectators began to thin out, heading home or to the local bars. It wasn't entirely unusual for surfers to stay out until dark, especially when the waves were good, but Tyler had plans that evening. He was supposed to meet his parents for dinner at 7 p.m. to celebrate his sponsorship deal. When Tyler didn't show up for dinner, his mother called his apartment. No answer. She tried the surf shop, but Brett said he hadn't seen Tyler since the morning phone call. By 8 p.m., genuinely worried now, Tyler's father drove to Pipeline. The parking lot was nearly empty, just Tyler's truck and a few cars belonging to couples watching the stars. He walked the beach with a flashlight, calling Tyler's name, the beam of light sweeping across the dark water. Nothing. Brett Morrison arrived at the beach around 8:30 p.m., having closed the shop early after getting a call from Tyler's father. He was the one who officially reported Tyler missing to the Honolulu Police Department at 8:47 p.m. The initial police report, filed by Officer David Kalani, classified it as a probable surfing accident. Pipeline had claimed experienced surfers before, its powerful waves driving them into the razor-sharp reef below. The report noted the solid swell conditions and the approaching darkness. Search and rescue would begin at first light. What the police didn't know that night was that Megan Chen's camera, the one she'd been using to photograph the afternoon session, contained 36 exposures that would have immediately changed the direction of their investigation. But that camera, along with the film inside, had vanished as completely as Tyler himself. Megan claimed she'd accidentally dropped it in the shore break while trying to help search for Tyler, the saltwater destroying both the camera and any images it contained. Shane corroborated her story, saying he'd seen her stumble in the dark, the camera slipping from her hands into the churning whitewater. The next morning brought a full-scale search operation. The Coast Guard helicopter flew grid patterns over the ocean. Jet skis searched the outer reefs. Divers examined the underwater caves where Pipeline's powerful currents sometimes trapped victims. The surf community rallied, with dozens of local surfers paddling out to search areas the official rescue teams couldn't reach. Shane Peterson was among the most visible volunteers, spending hours in the water, his concerned expression captured by news cameras. Megan was there too, using a backup camera to document the search efforts, her photographs later appearing in surf magazines as a tribute to Tyler's memory. Brett Morrison coordinated the land-based search, organizing volunteers to walk the beaches from Waimea to Velziland. He printed missing person flyers on the shop's photocopier, Tyler's smiling face soon plastered on every telephone pole and shop window on the North Shore. He also quietly contacted some of Tyler's sponsors, suggesting they might want to contribute to a reward fund. His genuine distress seemed evident to everyone. He'd lost not just a business partner, but someone he'd known since childhood. 3 days into the search, Tyler's surfboard was found. Not at Pipeline, but 2 miles south at Kewana Beach, wedged between 2 rocks. The board was intact except for a single deep crack near the tail, the kind of damage that could result from impact with the reef. There was no leash attached, though Tyler always wore one. This discovery shifted the official narrative from missing person to presumed drowning. The search continued for another week, but winter swells and strong currents meant that victims who weren't found immediately often never surfaced at all. The investigation that followed Tyler's disappearance was hampered by the limitations of 1992 technology and the assumptions of local law enforcement. The Honolulu Police Department, stretched thin by gang violence in Chinatown and ice epidemics spreading through the islands, allocated minimal resources to what appeared to be another surfing tragedy. Detective Ray Kawamoto, 2 years from retirement, was assigned the case more as a formality than a genuine investigation. His reports, typed on an IBM Selectric typewriter and filed in manila folders, reflected the prevailing theory: experienced surfer, dangerous conditions, tragic accident. But inconsistencies emerged almost immediately for those who looked closely. Tyler's leash, a standard O'Neill model that he religiously attached to his ankle, was never found. Surfers who knew Pipeline's currents argued that if Tyler's board washed up at Kewana Beach, his body should have been found in the same area. The crack on the surfboard, when examined by a local shaper, seemed inconsistent with reef impact. It looked more like damage from being struck by another board, though this observation was dismissed as speculation. Shane Peterson's alibi for the rest of December 18 initially seemed solid. After the afternoon surf session, he claimed to have driven to Halewa to meet friends at Jameson's by the Sea, a popular restaurant overlooking the harbor. The waitress remembered seeing him around 4 p.m., though she couldn't be certain of the exact time. He paid with a credit card, the receipt time-stamped at 5:47 p.m. Security cameras at the restaurant had captured him at the bar, though the grainy VHS footage made it difficult to determine precise timing. What investigators didn't notice was the 2-hour gap between when Shane was last seen at Pipeline and when the credit card receipt was printed. Megan Chen's story had its own problems. She claimed to have left Pipeline around 3 p.m. to develop film at the makeshift darkroom in Shane's garage. But the neighbor who lived across the street, an elderly Japanese woman who spent her afternoons tending her garden, didn't remember seeing Megan's distinctive red Honda Civic return until almost 5 p.m. When questioned about this discrepancy, Megan said she'd stopped at Matsumoto's Shave Ice and then driven to Shark's Cove to shoot some landscape photos. No one could confirm seeing her at either location. Brett Morrison's activities that afternoon and evening were the most thoroughly documented. After Tyler's phone call at 11:30 a.m., he remained at the surf shop until 6 p.m., confirmed by multiple customers and his employee, a local kid named Kai who worked part-time. Brett's credit card records showed him buying gas at the Chevron station at 6:30 p.m., then picking up a 6-pack of Primo beer at the liquor store next door. He was home by 7 p.m., calling Tyler's parents at 7:30 p.m. to ask if Tyler had shown up for dinner. Everything seemed to account for his time, yet something felt rehearsed about his timeline, too perfect in its documentation. The financial aspects of Tyler's life became relevant as investigators tried to establish any motive for foul play. His recent sponsorship deal with Wavestorm International was worth $50,000 paid in installments over 2 years. The first check for $10,000 had been deposited into Tyler's account on December 15th, just 3 days before his disappearance. He'd immediately written a check for $3,000 to his parents and another for $2,000 to Brett's surf shop as investment in their shaping business. The remaining $5,000 was still in his account untouched. Brett's financial situation painted a starkly different picture. Bank records subpoenaed later showed a pattern of large cash withdrawals throughout November and December. His business account was overdrawn by nearly $5,000. Personal credit cards were maxed out. What the investigation didn't uncover, because they never looked, was Brett's connection to Jimmy Tong, a Chinatown bookie who ran his operation out of the back room of the Golden Phoenix restaurant. Brett owed $30,000 from a series of bad bets on NFL games, particularly a disastrous wager on the Buffalo Bills in their playoff run. The pager records from December 1992 told their own story. Shane's Motorola pager showed multiple incoming pages from Megan throughout December 18th, starting at 2 p.m. and continuing until 11 p.m. The numeric codes were cryptic: 411 for information, 143 for I love you, 911 for emergency. The pattern suggested increasing urgency as the day progressed. But what stood out was a page at 2:45 p.m., just 15 minutes after Tyler was last seen, showing 187, police code for homicide, though it was also used as slang among surfers to mean someone got seriously worked in the waves. Tyler's own pager, found in his truck, had received only 2 pages that day. One from his mother at noon reminding him about dinner, another from an unknown number at 2:20 p.m. showing just 999, a code that had no clear meaning to investigators. The number traced back to a payphone at Pipeline Beach, the same one Tyler had used that morning. Someone had paged him from that phone just 10 minutes before the incident, but no one admitted to making that call. The VHS tape that would prove most significant wasn't discovered until a week after Tyler's disappearance. A Japanese tourist, reviewing his vacation footage back in Tokyo, had inadvertently captured the pipeline lineup in the background of shots he was taking of his wife. When news of Tyler's disappearance reached Japan through surf magazines, the tourist contacted the Hawaiian consulate. The tape, when finally reviewed by police, showed approximately 90 seconds of relevant footage. Tyler was clearly visible dropping into a wave. Shane was in position further down the line. But most importantly, there was a third figure in the water, someone on a bodyboard who seemed to be deliberately positioning themselves in Tyler's path. This bodyboarder was never identified. They wore a full wetsuit despite the warm water and a hat that obscured their features. What made this figure suspicious was their behavior after Tyler's wave. Instead of continuing to bodyboard, they paddled directly to shore and disappeared from frame. The timestamp on the tourist's camera showed 2:28 p.m., just 2 minutes before Tyler's last confirmed sighting. Investigators made inquiries at local bodyboarding shops, but no one remembered seeing an unfamiliar bodyboarder at Pipeline that day. The surf photography community on the North Shore in 1992 was small and tight-knit. Everyone knew everyone, and Megan Chen had quickly established herself as one of the most talented newcomers. Her portfolio from that winter included stunning shots of Shane surfing Pipeline, images that would later appear in major magazines. But other photographers noticed something odd about Megan's work from December 18th. She claimed her camera was destroyed in the shore break while searching for Tyler, yet she had professional quality photos from that exact session that she sold to Surfer magazine 2 months later. When questioned about this, she said those were from a different roll she'd already removed from the camera. The relationship between Shane and Megan was more complex than it initially appeared. Neighbors in Halewa reported frequent arguments, often about money and Shane's inability to maintain his sponsorships. One particularly heated exchange, overheard by a couple walking their dog on the beach, involved Megan screaming that she was tired of supporting a loser, and Shane responding that she wouldn't have any career without him. This was 3 nights before Tyler's disappearance. The morning after Tyler vanished, neighbors noticed an unusual calm between the couple, as if their chronic tension had suddenly evaporated. Brett Morrison's behavior in the days following Tyler's disappearance raised its own questions. While publicly organizing search efforts and memorial plans, he was privately making significant changes to his business arrangements. On December 21, just 3 days after Tyler vanished, Brett filed paperwork to dissolve their surfboard shaping partnership, citing abandonment by partner as the reason. He also attempted to cash the $2,000 check Tyler had written to the business, though the bank refused given the circumstances. Most tellingly, his gambling debts to Jimmy Tung were suddenly settled in full on December 23, paid in cash according to sources in Chinatown who spoke to police off the record. The memorial service for Tyler Nakamura was held on January 3, 1993 at Sunset Beach. With Body, the family followed Hawaiian tradition, releasing Tyler's surfboard into the waves along with lei and flowers. The entire North Shore surf community attended. Shane Peterson gave a speech about respecting the ocean's power, his voice breaking with apparent emotion. Megan Chen presented the family with a framed photograph of Tyler surfing Pipeline. One, she said, was from his last session. Brett Morrison announced the establishment of the Tyler Nakamura Memorial Fund, which would provide scholarships for young local surfers. But one person at the memorial noticed something others missed. Leilani Kahale, who worked at the photo development lab in Wahiawa, where many surf photographers processed their film, recognized the print Megan gave to Tyler's family. She was certain she'd developed that exact image 2 weeks before Tyler's disappearance, not from his last session. Leilani mentioned this to a friend, but never formally reported it, assuming she must be mistaken. Her friend would only come forward with this information 3 decades later. The official investigation was closed in March 1993. The Honolulu Police Department's final report concluded that Tyler Nakamura died in a surfing accident at Pipeline, his body swept out to sea by strong currents. The case file, just 40 pages thick, was archived in a basement storage facility where it would remain untouched for decades. Detective Kawamoto retired on schedule, moving to Las Vegas, where he spent his pension playing video poker and trying to forget the cases that never quite made sense. As the years passed, Tyler's story became part of North Shore mythology. Old-timers would point to Pipeline and tell younger surfers about the local kid who was on the verge of making it big before the ocean claimed him. His photograph remained on the wall at Sunset Surf Shop, which Brett continued to operate successfully. Shane Peterson left Hawaii in 1994, returning to California where he eventually became a real estate agent in Orange County. Megan Chen built a successful career as a surf photographer, her work appearing in magazines worldwide, though she rarely returned to Hawaii. The truth might have remained buried forever, if not for the massive storm that hit Oahu in March 2024. Climate change had intensified Pacific storms, and this one brought waves unlike anything seen since the early 1990s. The 40-foot faces carved away sections of beach that had been stable for decades, revealing objects long buried in the sand. Among the debris was a pelican case, the waterproof seal still intact despite 3 decades underground. Inside, wrapped in a plastic bag, was Megan Chen's Nikon camera, the one she claimed had been destroyed in the shore break while searching for Tyler. The discovery of the camera sent shockwaves through Hawaii's surf community. The tourist who found it, a retired engineer from Portland with a metal detecting hobby, immediately recognized its potential significance. The pelican case bore a faded label with Megan Chen's name and a Honolulu phone number that had been disconnected for decades. He turned it over to the Honolulu Police Department, where it sat in evidence for 2 weeks before someone connected it to the cold case from 1992. Detective Sarah Akama, part of HPD's cold case unit established in 2018, was assigned to review the finding. Unlike the original investigation, she had access to modern technology and, more importantly, a fresh perspective unclouded by assumptions about surfing accidents. The camera, a Nikon F4 that had retailed for nearly $2,000 in 1992, was in remarkable condition thanks to the watertight case. But it was the film inside that would prove revelatory. The film was developed using specialized techniques for aged negatives. Of the 36 exposures, 34 were recoverable. They showed a December day at Pipeline, surfers carving across powerful waves, the kind of images that would have been valuable to any surf magazine. But the last 5 frames told a different story. They showed Tyler Nakamura on his surfboard, Shane Peterson nearby, and critically, they showed what happened at 2:30 p.m. on December 18, 1992. The photographs revealed that the unidentified boarder from the tourist's video was actually Megan Chen herself. She had positioned herself directly in Tyler's path as he bottom-turned on a critical wave. The sequence showed Tyler trying to avoid collision, his board's rail catching as he made an emergency adjustment. The 4th frame captured the moment of impact, not with the reef, but with another surfboard that had been deliberately swung at Tyler as he struggled to recover. The angle and composition suggested these weren't accidental shots, but deliberately framed documentation. Detective Akamu immediately recognized the implications. These photographs hadn't been taken by Megan from the beach with a telephoto lens as she'd claimed. They were taken by someone else, someone who was also in the water, someone who had captured evidence of what appeared to be an orchestrated attack. The metadata preserved in the film's edge markings confirmed the date, December 18, 1992. The camera settings indicated they were taken with a waterproof housing, meaning the photographer was in the ocean during the incident. The investigation now shifted to identifying who had taken these photographs. The angle suggested the photographer was positioned north of the main pipeline lineup, possibly near off the wall. Cross-referencing with the original witness statements, only one person admitted to being in that area, Brett Morrison. But Brett had always maintained he was at his shop during the incident, with multiple witnesses confirming his alibi. The photographs suggested otherwise. Modern analysis techniques revealed details invisible to 1990s investigators. Enhancement of the images showed reflections in the water that included a fourth figure, someone floating just outside the impact zone. The wetsuit was distinctive, a red and black O'Neill design that Brett had been known to wear. More damning was a partial reflection showing what appeared to be a waterproof camera housing being held at chest level, the photographer documenting events as they unfolded. Detective Akamu obtained a warrant to re-examine all evidence from 1992. Most had been destroyed according to standard retention policies, but Tyler's personal effects, held at his family's request, remained in storage. Among them was an undeveloped roll of film from a disposable camera found in Tyler's apartment. When developed using modern techniques, it revealed photographs from a beach party 3 nights before Tyler's disappearance. One image showed Brett, Shane, and Megan talking intensely near a bonfire, their body language suggesting conspiracy rather than casual conversation. Tyler had photographed his own killers planning his death. The investigation now focused on establishing the connection between the 3 suspects. Financial forensics, unavailable in 1992, revealed a complex web of transactions. 3 days after Tyler's death, Shane Peterson received a wire transfer of $15,000 from an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. The account was registered to a shell company, but modern international banking agreements allowed investigators to trace it back to its source, Brett Morrison's surf shop. The same day, Megan Chen deposited $8,000 in cash into her account, claiming it was payment for a photo assignment that no magazine could verify. Brett Morrison, now 71 years old and still living in Hawaii, had built a successful chain of surf shops across the islands. When Detective Akamu arrived at his Halewa mansion with a warrant, Brett's first words were, "I always wondered when this day would come." He had kept meticulous records, perhaps out of guilt or paranoia, hidden in a safe behind a painting of Pipeline. Among the documents was a cassette tape, labeled simply, "Insurance." The tape was a recording from Brett's answering machine, preserved on a format that required special equipment to play. It contained a message from Megan Chen, left at 11:47 p.m. on December 18, 1992. "It's done. Shane lost it and hit him harder than planned. I got him to shore, but he wasn't breathing. We buried everything at the spot we discussed. Shane's freaking out, but I'll handle him. You need to establish your alibi now. Delete this after you listen." Brett hadn't deleted it. Instead, he'd kept it for 32 years, insurance against his co-conspirators. The plan, as Brett finally confessed, had been simpler than the execution. Tyler's sponsorship money was supposed to save Brett from his gambling debts. Tyler had promised to invest more after receiving his second payment in January. But Jimmy Tong wouldn't wait. Brett knew about Shane's jealousy and Megan's frustration with Shane's failures. He proposed what was supposed to be a non-fatal attack. Shane would injure Tyler during a surf session, making it look like an accident that would sideline Tyler long enough for Brett to access the business accounts and borrow the money. But Megan had her own agenda. She was pregnant with Tyler's child, the result of a brief affair during a photo shoot in November. Tyler had rejected her suggestion that they be together, saying he loved his girlfriend and the affair had been a mistake. For Megan, the plan became about more than money. She wanted Tyler gone, permanently. She convinced Shane that Tyler had been spreading rumors about him, that Tyler was the reason he'd lost his sponsorships. She worked Shane into a rage, knowing his temper would turn a planned injury into something fatal. The execution on December 18th unfolded differently than planned. Megan entered the water on a bodyboard, unusual for her but not suspicious given many photographers used them for mobility. She positioned herself to force Tyler into Shane's path. When Tyler tried to avoid her, Shane struck him with his board, the blow connecting with Tyler's head. Tyler went under, his leash somehow severed in the impact. Megan and Shane pulled him to shore at a secluded spot near Keiki Beach, where they discovered he was already dead. The burial site, the spot we discussed in Megan's message, was a section of beach near Shark's Cove where erosion had created a deep hollow in the sand. They buried Tyler there, along with Megan's camera, which contained the incriminating film. What they didn't know was that Brett had been photographing everything from the water, initially to document what was supposed to be a simple assault for insurance purposes. When he realized Tyler was dead, Brett made a split-second decision to maintain his alibi, rushing back to his shop where Kai confirmed seeing him return from lunch at 2:45 p.m. Shane Peterson, tracked down in California, was arrested by federal marshals at his real estate office in Newport Beach. Now 58, he'd built a successful career selling beachfront properties to tech millionaires. His arrest, captured on security cameras, showed a man who seemed almost relieved. "I've been waiting for this for 30 years, he told the marshals. "Every time I saw a police car, I thought it was over." He confessed during the flight back to Hawaii, claiming Megan had manipulated him, that he never meant for Tyler to die. Megan Chen proved harder to locate. Her successful photography career had taken her around the world, but she'd been careful to avoid Hawaii. She was finally found in Indonesia, living under her married name, Megan Rodriguez, teaching photography workshops to tourists in Bali. The Indonesian authorities arrested her at dawn, pulling her from a yoga class she was attending. Unlike Shane and Brett, Megan maintained her innocence, claiming the photographs were fabricated, the tape was fake, that she was being framed by two men trying to save themselves. The trial began in September 2024, drawing massive media attention. The courthouse in Honolulu was packed every day, with members of Hawaii's surf community filling the gallery. Tyler's parents, now in their 80s, sat in the front row, finally getting answers to questions that had haunted them for 3 decades. The prosecution presented the photographs, the tape, the financial records, and the confessions of Brett and Shane. The defense tried to argue that the evidence was too degraded, that memories after 32 years were unreliable, that the confessions were coerced. The key moment came when prosecutors played the enhanced audio from the tourists' videotape. With modern audio processing, technicians had isolated voices from the wind and waves. Shane's voice was clear. "Do it now!" followed by Megan responding, "Get his leash!" And then, chillingly, Tyler's voice saying, "What are you doing?" before the sound of impact. The courtroom sat in stunned silence. These were Tyler's last words, preserved on a Japanese tourist's vacation video for 32 years. Brett Morrison was sentenced to 25 years to life for murder in the second degree and conspiracy. At his sentencing, he read a statement apologizing to Tyler's family, saying his gambling addiction had led him to betray someone who trusted him like a brother. He died in prison 3 years later, heart failure brought on by decades of guilt and poor health. His surf shop empire was liquidated, with proceeds going to Tyler's family and ocean conservation charities. Shane Peterson received life without parole for murder in the first degree. The jury rejected his claim of manipulation, finding that his jealousy and rage were his own choices. He's currently serving his sentence at Halawa Correctional Facility, where he teaches literacy to other inmates and has written numerous letters of apology to Tyler's family, none of which have been answered. He spends his days reading and rereading surf magazines from the 1990s, stuck forever in the era of his greatest failure. Megan Chen, despite her protests of innocence, was convicted of murder in the first degree and conspiracy to commit murder. The jury deliberated for just 3 hours. She received life without parole, her photography career ending in a Filipino prison where she was housed while awaiting extradition. She continues to maintain her innocence, filing appeal after appeal, claiming the physical evidence was planted and the confessions of her co-conspirators were lies to reduce their own sentences. The revelation of Tyler's murder sent shockwaves through Hawaii's surf community. Pipeline, already respected as one of the world's most dangerous waves, took on a darker meaning. A memorial was erected at the beach, a simple plaque reading, Tyler Nakamura, 1968 to 1992, son of the North Shore, forever riding the perfect wave. Every December 18th, surfers gather at Pipeline for a paddle-out ceremony, forming a circle in the lineup where Tyler died, sharing stories and throwing lei into the center. Tyler's girlfriend from 1992, now a grandmother living in Kahuku, revealed that Tyler had been planning to propose on Christmas Eve. He'd already bought the ring, a simple band with a small diamond that he'd saved for months to afford. She kept it all these years, wearing it on a chain around her neck, never quite believing the official story of his death. Learning the truth brought pain, but also closure. "At least now I know he didn't just leave us," she said. "He was taken." The case changed how Hawaii law enforcement handles missing surfer cases. No longer are they automatically assumed to be accidents. The Tyler Nakamura Protocol requires full investigation of any disappearance in the surf, including financial reviews and relationship analysis. Detective Sarah Akamu received a commendation for her work, though she credits the breakthrough to climate change, saying, "If not for that storm, Tyler's truth would have remained buried forever." The North Shore today is a different place than it was in 1992. Webcams broadcast every wave to the world. Social media documents every session. And GPS trackers and leashes mean surfers are rarely truly alone. But on certain winter mornings, when the trade winds back off and Pipeline shows its perfect form, old-timers remember Tyler Nakamura and the December day when paradise revealed its capacity for evil. They tell younger surfers to respect not just the ocean's power, but the darkness that can hide behind friendly smiles and offers of help. Tyler's sponsorship money, the $50,000 that cost him his life, would be worth nearly $100,000 today with inflation. Brett Morrison's gambling debt of $30,000 would be about $60,000. 3 lives were destroyed, a family left grieving for 3 decades, all for amounts that seem tragically small in retrospect. As Tyler's father said at the trial's conclusion, "They killed my son for what I now pay in a year of property taxes. His life was worth infinitely more than any amount of money." The final truth emerged in Brett's prison diary, discovered after his death. He wrote about December 18, 1992, almost obsessively, returning to that day again and again. His last entry, dated the day before his heart attack, was simple. "I see Tyler in every wave. He's still out there, waiting for justice." Today, finally, he can rest. I cannot. The diary was given to Tyler's family, who chose to burn it in a ceremonial fire on the beach, sending Brett's guilt to join Tyler's spirit in the Pacific Ocean. The Pelican case that preserved the evidence for 32 years is now in the Honolulu Police Museum, a reminder that the truth has its own timeline. The camera inside still works, a testament to 1990s build quality and waterproof engineering. Visitors often ask why Megan buried it so carefully if she thought she'd gotten away with murder. The answer, psychologists suggest, is that killers often keep trophies, evidence of their crimes that they can't quite let go. Megan's trophy became her conviction. In the end, Tyler Nakamura's story isn't just about murder in paradise. It's about how jealousy, desperation, and manipulation can turn friends into killers. How the ocean that gives life can also hide death, and how the truth, patient and persistent, eventually surfaces like a long-held wave finally breaking on shore. Tyler was 24 when he died, full of promise and joy, ready to lift up his family and community with his success. He would have been 56 today, perhaps a surf coach, a father, a mentor to young Hawaiian surfers. Instead, he remains forever young in photographs and memories, riding an eternal wave while his killers count the decades in prison cells, their own lives the ultimate price for 30 pieces of silver that couldn't save them from themselves. The waves at Pipeline continue to break, perfect and perilous, indifferent to human drama. Surfers still gather when the conditions align, dropping into barrels that can create legends or end lives. But now they know Tyler's story, how paradise became a hunting ground, how friends became executioners, and how the ocean, in its own time, gives back what it takes. The North Shore remembers Tyler Nakamura not as a victim, but as a son of Hawaii whose death revealed truths about trust, greed, and the terrible cost of keeping secrets in the sand.